My name is Stephanie. I am 15 years old. I live with my parents in a small town. My school is not very far from our house. Every morning, I take the bus to school. I like school because I enjoy learning new things and spending time with my friends. I study hard because I want to have a good future. My favorite subject is biology. I like learning about how the human body works. After school, I usually take the bus home. The bus is often full at that time of the day. Many students go home after lunch. Sometimes, older people also take the bus. They go to the shops or to the park. I always see many faces on the bus. Some are young and loud, and some are quiet and old. I like to watch people because everyone looks different, but we all share the same space for a little time. One day when I got on the bus, I saw an old woman standing near the door. She looked tired. Her hands were shaking a little. All the seats were full. I felt bad when I saw her. I stood up and said, "You can take my seat." She looked at me with kind eyes and smiled. "Thank you, dear," she said. She sat down slowly. I felt happy because I knew she needed the seat more than I did. Since that day, I always look for people who need help on the bus. When I see an elderly man or woman, I offer my seat. Sometimes they smile. Sometimes they say no, but I still feel good for asking. Helping others makes me feel calm. It feels right. I don't do it because someone tells me to. I do it because I want to be kind. After I get off the bus, I walk home. There is a big road with a traffic light near the bus stop. It is a busy place. Cars move fast, and it can be hard to cross. There is a small button near the traffic light that people must press to get a green light. Many old people do not understand how it works. They stand there waiting, not knowing that they must push the button. I see this often, and when I do, I go and help. I say, "Let me press it for you." They always thank me. Some tell me about their lives while we wait for the green light. One day, I helped an old man who had a walking stick. He smiled at me and said, "You remind me of my granddaughter. She lives far away. You are very kind." His words made me feel warm. I said, "Thank you, sir. I like helping people." He looked at me and said, "The world needs more people like you." I did not know what to say. I just smiled. When the light turned green, I helped him cross slowly. I watched him walk away until he disappeared around the corner. When I got home that day, my mother was cooking dinner. She asked, "How was school?" I told her about my day and the man I helped. My mother smiled and said, "That is very nice of you, Stephanie. I am proud of you." I felt shy, but happy. My father came into the kitchen and said, "What's this I hear about my daughter helping people again?" He smiled and touched my shoulder. "You have a big heart," he said. Their kind words made me feel good. Helping people is not always easy. Sometimes I am in a hurry. Sometimes I am tired and want to sit. But when I see someone who needs help, I forget my tiredness. I think about how I would feel if I were old or weak. I would want someone to help me. So, I help others when I can. One cold afternoon, the bus was very crowded. I stood near the door holding the pole. I saw an old woman trying to get on. She was holding a bag and a walking stick. I quickly moved to help her. "Here, let me hold your bag," I said. She smiled and gave it to me. When she got on, she looked around, but there were no empty seats. A boy near the back was sitting with his feet on a chair. I went to him and said, "Can you please move your feet? This lady needs to sit." The boy looked at me and said, "Why should I?" I said, "Because she is old and tired." He sighed and slowly moved his feet. The woman sat down. She said, "Thank you, young lady." I smiled and said, "You're welcome." After that, the boy looked at me for a moment and then said, "You always help old people?" I said, "Yes, when I can." He didn't say anything, but I saw him give his seat to an old man the next day. That made me smile. I learned that when we help, we also teach others to help. At home, I often help my parents too. I wash the dishes after dinner. I clean my room and help my mother with the laundry. My parents work hard every day. I want to make their lives easier. My mother always says, "Kindness starts at home." I believe she is right. Sometimes I think about my future. I know I want to do something that helps people. I like taking care of others. I think I want to be a nurse or a caretaker. I imagine myself working in a hospital or an elderly home. I would help people who are sick or weak. I think it would be hard work, but I would feel proud to do it. One day, our teacher asked us to write about our dream job. I wrote about wanting to be a caretaker. When my teacher read it, she smiled and said, "Stephanie, this is a wonderful dream. The world needs kind people like you." Her words stayed in my mind. I felt encouraged. Another day, I was walking home from the store when I saw an old woman standing near the road. She looked confused. I asked, "Do you need help?" She said, "Yes, I want to go to the other side, but I can't press the button." I helped her and waited until the light turned green. Then I held her hand and walked with her. When we reached the other side, she said, "Thank you, my dear. You are very kind." I said, "It's okay. I'm happy to help." She smiled and said, "I hope you never lose that kindness." Her words made me think. Sometimes people do not notice when you help them. Sometimes they walk away without saying thank you. But I do not help because I want thanks. I help because I care. When I help someone, I feel good inside. It feels like a small light in my day. My friends at school sometimes laugh and say, "Stephanie, you act like a teacher or a mother." I laugh too, but I know I just like helping people. Once, one of my friends fell and hurt her knee. I took her to the school nurse and stayed with her until she felt better. She said, "Thank you, Stephanie. You always care about others." I smiled and said, "That's what friends are for." When I think about all the small things I do, I feel proud. Helping someone to cross the road or giving a seat to an old person may seem small, but to them, it can mean a lot. I have learned that kindness does not need to be big. Even small actions can make someone's day better. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about all the people I had helped. The man with the walking stick, the lady at the traffic light, the old woman on the bus. I also thought about the people who helped me, my parents, my teachers, my friends. I realized that we all need help at some time. We all can be kind. We all can make life better for someone else. I closed my eyes with a smile. I was happy to know that my small actions mattered. I wanted to keep helping people all my life, and maybe, one day, I could help many more as a real caretaker. That is my dream. Before I continue rest of the story, please like, subscribe, share, and tell me where you are listening from. Your support means a lot to me. Now let's continue. The next morning, I woke up early. The sky was gray and the air felt cool. I put on my school uniform and packed my bag. My mother was already in the kitchen making breakfast. She smiled when she saw me and said, "Good morning, sweetheart." I said, "Good morning, Mom." She asked, "Are you ready for school?" I said, "Yes, I am." We sat together and ate toast with jam. My father came in a few minutes later. He was reading the newspaper. "Stephanie," he said, "I read a story about a young girl who helps old people every day. You remind me of her." I smiled and said, "Maybe one day I'll be in the newspaper too." My father laughed and said, "Maybe you will. You already have the heart for it." After breakfast, I walked to the bus stop. It was a quiet morning. The road was wet from the rain last night. When the bus arrived, I got on and sat near the window. The seat next to me was empty. I looked outside and saw people walking with umbrellas. The bus moved slowly through the town. When we reached the next stop, an old woman with white hair got on. She looked tired. I stood up and said, "You can sit here." She smiled and said, "Thank you, dear." She sat down, and I held on to the pole. After a few minutes, the bus stopped suddenly. Everyone moved a little. The driver shouted, "Sorry, the road is wet." The old woman held my arm to stay balanced. "Are you okay?" I asked. She nodded and said, "Yes, thank you." I smiled and felt glad that I stood near her. The ride was long because of the rain. When we reached the bus station, I helped her get off safely. She said, "You are a good girl. Always stay kind." I said, "I will." At school, the teacher told us that we would visit an elderly home next week. She said, "We will go there to meet the people who live alone. We will talk to them and help them with small things." I felt excited. I raised my hand and said, "Can we bring them something?" The teacher smiled and said, "Yes, Stephanie, that's a good idea. Maybe we can make cards or bring flowers." The whole class liked the idea. We decided to make colorful cards with kind messages. That evening, I told my mother about the plan. She said, "That sounds wonderful. We can buy some flowers too." I said, "Thank you, Mom." She helped me choose some soft pink flowers from our garden. I also made 3 cards that said, "You are loved," "You are special," and "You are never alone." I decorated them with hearts and stars. My little brother helped me color them. He said, "Will the old people like these?" I said, "Yes, they will." He smiled and said, "Maybe I can help too." I said, "Of course." The next week came quickly. Our class got on the school bus and went to the elderly home. The building was big but quiet. There were trees around it and a small garden near the entrance. A kind nurse welcomed us and said, "Thank you for coming. The residents will be happy to see you." We walked into a large room. Many old people were sitting on chairs, some in wheelchairs, and some walking slowly with sticks. They looked surprised when they saw us. I walked to an old woman who sat alone by the window. She was looking outside. I smiled and said, "Hello, my name is Stephanie." She turned to me and smiled softly. "Hello, dear. My name is Mary." I gave her one of my cards. She looked at it and said, "Oh, this is beautiful. Did you make it yourself?" I said, "Yes." She held it close and said, "Thank you. No one has given me something like this in a long time." I sat beside her and asked, "Do you like living here?" She said, "It's okay. It's quiet. The nurses are nice, but I miss my family." I listened quietly. She told me that her children lived in another city and could not visit often. I felt sad for her, but I smiled and said, "Today, I will be your family." She laughed softly and said, "You are very sweet." Other students were talking and helping too. One boy played music on his phone and everyone clapped. Another girl helped a man draw a flower. The room was full of smiles and laughter. I stayed with Mary for a long time. She told me stories about her childhood, about how she loved dancing, and about her husband who passed away many years ago. Her eyes were full of memories. I listened to her carefully. Before leaving, I gave her one of the pink flowers. She said, "Thank you, my dear. You made my day brighter." I said, "I'll come again someday." She held my hand and said, "I hope you do." On the way back to school, I looked out the bus window and thought about Mary. I felt warm and happy. I realized how small actions, like giving a card or listening, can bring so much joy. I wanted to do more of that in my life. The next few days went by fast. I helped my friends at school with their homework. I helped my mother clean the kitchen when she was tired. I also helped a neighbor carry her groceries. I noticed that when I helped, people smiled. That made me happy. My teacher said, "Stephanie, you have a gift for caring. You should think about studying nursing in the future." I said, "Yes, I want to do that." One Saturday morning, I went to the market with my mother. It was a busy day. People were walking in every direction. We bought vegetables and bread. When we were about to leave, I saw an old man drop his wallet. I ran and picked it up. "Sir," I said, "you dropped your wallet." He turned around and looked surprised. "Oh, thank you, young lady," he said. "I didn't even notice." I smiled and said, "It's okay." He opened the wallet and took out a small coin. "Here, take this," he said. "It's just a small gift." I said, "No, thank you. I don't need it." He smiled and said, "You remind me of my daughter. She was kind like you." I smiled and said, "That's nice." As we walked home, my mother said, "You have such a kind heart, Stephanie. Never change." I said, "I won't, Mom." That night, I wrote in my school notebook about the day. I wrote that helping others makes me feel peaceful. A week later, something special happened. The principal called my name during morning assembly. I felt nervous and surprised. She said, "Stephanie, please come to the front." I walked to the stage. She said, "Stephanie has shown great kindness and care for others. She helped at the elderly home, helped people on the bus, and showed what true kindness means. We are proud of her." Everyone clapped. My face felt warm. I didn't know what to say. I just smiled. The principal gave me a small certificate that said, "For kindness and compassion." I held it tightly and felt proud. After the assembly, my friends came to me. They said, "You deserve it, Stephanie." I said, "Thank you." My teacher came too and said, "You should be proud of yourself. Keep doing what you love." I said, "I will." That evening, I showed the certificate to my parents. My mother hugged me and said, "I'm so proud of you." My father smiled and said, "This is only the beginning. I can see your future already." I said, "I hope so." We had dinner together, and everyone was happy. Before going to bed, I looked at the certificate again. It was not big or shiny, but it meant a lot to me. It reminded me that kindness is important. Even a small act can change someone's day. I put the paper on my desk near my school books. I wanted to see it every morning to remind myself to always be kind. That night, I thought about all the people I had met. The woman on the bus, the man with the wallet, the lady named Mary at the elderly home. I thought about how simple it was to make them smile. I realized that helping others was not just something I did. It was a part of who I was. I closed my eyes and felt peaceful. A few weeks passed, and life at school felt normal again. But something inside me felt stronger. I started to notice small things more often. When someone dropped their books, I helped pick them up. When a classmate felt sad, I sat with her. I did not do these things to get thanks. I did them because I liked seeing people feel better. One afternoon, after school, I waited for the bus as usual. The sun was bright, and people were tired from the day. The bus arrived, full as always. I got in and stood near the door. Then I saw an old man trying to climb the steps. His hand was shaking. I moved fast to help him. "Take my hand, sir," I said. He smiled and said, "Thank you, young lady." I helped him find a seat. The bus moved again, and I stood beside him. After a moment, he said, "You remind me of my granddaughter. She used to help me like this." I smiled and said, "That's nice. You must miss her." He nodded and looked out the window. "She lives far away," he said. "I don't see her much now." His voice was soft. I felt quiet for a while. Then he said, "It makes me happy to see that some young people still care." When the bus stopped, I helped him get off. He said, "Thank you again, my dear. You made this old man's day easier." I said, "I'm glad, sir. Take care." I watched him walk away slowly. That evening, I told my mother about him. She listened carefully and said, "Sometimes people just need a little kindness to feel seen." I understood what she meant. A small action can mean a lot. Days later, our teacher announced a new project. We will write about people who inspire us, she said. Everyone started thinking. I already knew my answer. I wanted to write about the people who needed help, the old man on the bus, the woman at the traffic light, and Mary at the elderly home. I wanted to write about how helping them helped me too. When I read my story in class, everyone listened quietly. I said, "Helping people makes life better for everyone. It doesn't need to be big. It can be a smile, a seat, or a few kind words. I want to spend my life doing that." When I finished, my teacher said, "That was beautiful, Stephanie. You have a kind heart and a clear dream." My classmates clapped softly. I felt shy, but proud. After class, one of my friends came to me. She said, "I liked what you said. Yesterday, I helped my neighbor for the first time. It felt good." I smiled and said, "That's wonderful." I was happy to see how kindness spreads when we share it. That night before sleeping, I looked at my certificate again. I thought about all the people I had met and all the small moments that changed my days. I knew I still had a lot to learn, but I also knew what kind of person I wanted to be. I whispered softly to myself, "I want to help people every day." Then I closed my eyes with a calm heart. I didn't know what my future would look like, but I knew one thing for sure. I wanted to make the world a little kinder, one helping hand at a time. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video and subscribe to English Medium Stories. Stay with us for more classic stories in easy English. My name is Astrid. I am from Sweden, and I have lived there all my life. Winters in Sweden are long and dark. The sun hides for many days, and the streets stay quiet under the snow. I like my country, but sometimes I feel tired of the cold. Every year, I wait for summer, but summer is short. That is why I started to plan a long vacation far away. I wanted to go somewhere warm and bright, where I could walk in the sun and feel free. I do not have a big career or an exciting job. I work in a small office in my town. My work is simple, and I often feel that every day is the same. I wake up early, take the bus, sit at my desk, and come home in the evening. Life is calm but quiet in a heavy way. I do not hate my life, but I often ask myself if this is all there is. So one day last year, I decided to save money for a long trip. I told myself that this time, it would not just be a short vacation. I wanted time to think, to rest, and maybe to learn something new about myself. I planned my trip for more than 6 months. I read about many places in Europe. I wanted the sea, the sun, and open air. When I saw pictures of Tenerife, I knew that was the place. The island looked full of light. There were beaches, mountains, small streets, and quiet corners. I liked that it was far from the city noise and far from everything I knew. I booked my flight, and each day after that, I counted the days until I could leave. When the day finally came, I felt nervous but excited. It was early morning, and snow was falling outside. I looked at my small suitcase by the door and smiled. I wore my warmest coat and walked to the bus stop. My hands were cold, but my heart felt light. At the airport, I looked at the large windows and saw planes coming and going. I thought about all the people traveling for work, love, or new beginnings. I wanted mine to be a beginning too. The flight took many hours. I watched clouds move below and thought about my life in Sweden. I remembered my small apartment, my quiet evenings, and the same walk to work each morning. I wondered what it would feel like to live differently, to not think about time all the time. When the plane started to land, I saw blue water shining in the sun. I had never seen such bright color before. I took a deep breath and smiled again. The air felt warm when I stepped outside the airport. It was evening, but the sky was still bright. The smell of the sea was soft in the air. People spoke in Spanish around me, and I could not understand the words, but they sounded like music. I took a bus toward the town where I had rented a small room for a month. The road went near the coast, and I saw the waves move like silver under the sunset. For a moment, I forgot all my worries. My room was simple. It had white walls, a small bed, and a window that looked over the sea. I left my bag on the floor and opened the window. The sound of the waves came in, and I stood there for a long time. Back home, the sound I heard at night was the wind through trees or cars far away. Here, it was the sea and the quiet voices of people walking below. I felt calm in a way I had not felt for years. The next morning, I woke up early. The sun was soft, and light came into the room through the curtains. I made tea and stood by the window again. The sea looked different now, bright and endless. I put on a light dress and walked outside. The street was full of small shops and open cafes. The people smiled easily. No one was in a hurry. I walked slowly toward the beach. My feet sank into the warm sand, and I looked at the horizon. I had never felt so far from home. I spent the first few days walking. I wanted to see everything. The town was small, with narrow streets and colorful houses. Flowers grew near the walls, and children played near the water. I liked how quiet it was in the early mornings. Sometimes I stopped at a small cafe near the beach and watched people. There were families, couples, and people sitting alone like me. Some read books, some just watched the sea. I felt peaceful there, like time was slower. One afternoon, I took a bus to another part of the island. The bus went up a hill, and from the window I could see the land below, full of green and yellow. The driver played soft music, and I thought about how easy everything felt here. I reached a small village near the mountains. There was a small square and a fountain in the middle. Old people sat on benches and talked quietly. I sat for a while too, just watching them. I did not understand what they said, but their faces looked kind. As the days passed, I started to think less about home. I did not check my phone much. I did not think about work or about what I would do next month. I walked, read, swam, and sometimes just sat by the water. I began to notice small things, the way the light changed in the evening, how the smell of the sea grew stronger at night, how children laughed in the distance. It felt good to be alone but not lonely. After a week, I started talking with a few people in the town. There was a man named Peter who ran a small boat for tourists. He was from England but had lived on the island for many years. He told me about the quiet beaches and the best place to watch the sunset. We spoke sometimes when I saw him near the harbor. He said he came to Tenerife for a short visit once, many years ago, but he never left. I asked him why, and he smiled and said, "Because here I started to live." I thought about his words for a long time. That evening, I went to watch the sunset from the hill. The sky was orange and pink, and the sea looked endless. I sat on a rock and watched the light fade slowly. I thought about Peter's words and wondered what he meant by starting to live. I asked myself when I last felt truly alive. I could not remember. Life in Sweden had been quiet but small, full of work and plans, but little feeling. Here, everything felt simple and real. I felt small in a good way, like the world was wide again. When I walked back to my room, the streetlights were on. I passed people sitting outside, laughing and talking softly. I smiled at them and kept walking. Inside my room, I turned off the light and listened to the sound of the sea again. It was a soft rhythm that felt safe. I did not know yet what this trip would mean for me, but I felt that something in my life was beginning to open in a slow, quiet way. I closed my eyes, tired but calm, ready for another day on the island. Before I continue rest of the story, please like, subscribe, share, and tell me where you are listening from. Your support means a lot to me. Now let's continue. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. The sky outside my window was still gray, and the sound of the sea was soft. I made a cup of tea and sat by the window, watching the first light touch the water. It felt peaceful. For the first time in a long time, I did not think about work or the future or what people expected from me. I only thought about the day that was waiting. After breakfast, I decided to visit a small town I had heard about from Peter. He said it was quiet and beautiful, with small paths near the cliffs. I took the morning bus and sat by the window. The road went near the coast, and I could see the ocean beside me the whole time. The driver played a slow song in Spanish, and even though I did not understand the words, the sound made me smile. When I arrived, the air felt warm and clean. The streets were narrow, and the houses were painted in soft colors. There were flowers in windows and small cats walking in the sun. I walked slowly, without a plan. For the first time, I felt no rush, no list of things to do. I went to a small place near the cliff and looked at the sea far below. The waves hit the rocks, white and strong. It looked both wild and calm at the same time. I stood there for a long moment, feeling the wind on my face. I met an old woman sitting on a chair outside her house. She smiled at me and said something in Spanish. I did not understand, but I smiled back. She pointed to the sky and said one word that sounded like bonito. I guessed she was talking about the weather. I said, "Yes, very nice." And she laughed. Even though we could not speak the same language, her kindness was easy to understand. It made me think about how often at home I walked past people without even looking at them. Here, people saw each other. Later that day, I went down to the beach. It was not very full. A few people were swimming, and some sat reading or talking. I lay on the sand and closed my eyes. I could hear the sound of the waves and the wind in the palm trees. I thought about how simple everything was. Back in Sweden, I always needed to plan everything, to control each part of my day. Here, I just let things happen. In the evening, I went back to the small town where I was staying. I stopped at the harbor and saw Peter again. He was talking with a few tourists and helping them onto his boat. When he saw me, he waved. "Astrid, you should come with us tomorrow," he said. "We go out early before the sun gets strong. It's quiet then. You'll like it." I said I would think about it. I was shy at first, but I also wanted to try something new. That night, I sat outside my room and watched the stars. The air was warm, and I could hear people laughing in the distance. I thought about my life back home. I had friends, but we did not meet often. Everyone was busy, always tired. Here, people stayed outside, talked, and took time to enjoy the evening. It made me wonder if maybe I had been living too fast, even though my life felt slow. The next morning, I joined Peter and a few others for the boat trip. The sea was calm and the sky was clear. As the boat moved, water splashed near my hands. The sound was light and steady. Peter told us about the sea and the island, about how he had come there for 1 week and decided to stay forever. He said he was a different person before. I listened quietly. His words made me think about choices. Maybe sometimes we do not need to know exactly what we want. Maybe we just need to go where we feel free. When the boat stopped, everyone went swimming. The water was warm and clear. I looked down and saw small fish moving below. It felt strange to float in the open sea. There was no sound but water and wind. I felt small, but not afraid. I thought about how far I was from my home and how much lighter I felt here. After the trip, Peter and I sat by the harbor. We talked about our lives, and he asked me why I came to Tenerife. I told him I wanted a break from my cold, quiet life. He said, "Sometimes we don't need a break from life. We just need to start living it differently." His words stayed with me the whole evening. Over the next few weeks, I started to change small things. I stopped checking the time all the time. I stopped making plans for every day. I started walking without maps, just following small paths. I found new places, small beaches, old stone walls, quiet gardens. Sometimes I met people and talked a little, even with my simple English. Other times, I spent the day alone and felt completely fine. One afternoon, I went to a small hill above the town. The wind was soft, and I could see the sea and the white houses below. I sat there and thought about the person I was before this trip. I used to think I needed to have a plan for everything. A career, a future, a clear goal. But now, I started to feel that maybe life did not always need to be so heavy. Maybe it could be gentle. At night, I began to sleep better. My thoughts were slower. I did not dream about missing work or being late. I dreamed about the sea and the sky. Sometimes I woke up in the early morning and felt calm. I would go outside and watch the first light. The world looked soft and new every day. One day, while walking near the harbor, I met a young woman named Sophie. She was from England and worked at a small art shop. She told me she had come to the island 5 years ago for 1 month and never left. "I thought I was coming for a holiday," she said. "But then I realized this is what life should feel like." She smiled when she said it, and I understood what she meant. Sophie invited me to join her and her friends one evening at the beach. They brought food and played music. We sat around a small fire and talked for hours. Some people spoke English, others Spanish. Sometimes I just listened, watching the fire move and the waves behind it. I did not say much, but I felt part of something. I was not a tourist anymore. I was just a person sitting by the sea, sharing a simple night with others. The next morning, I walked back to my room as the sun was rising. The streets were empty and quiet. I felt tired but happy. I thought about how much this island had already given me. I did not know what would happen when I returned home, but for the first time, I was not afraid of that question. I looked up at the sky. It was turning from pink to gold. I realized that my life could be different, not by changing everything, but by changing how I saw things. Maybe peace was not a place. Maybe it was a way of living. That evening, as I sat by the window again, I saw people walking, laughing, and talking below. I smiled quietly. I still had more time on the island, and I wanted to use it well, but not in the way I used to plan things. I wanted to keep learning how to just be, without pressure, without hurry. For now, that was enough. My last week in Tenerife came faster than I expected. The days felt soft and light, and each morning I woke up to the sound of waves. I had grown used to it, to the quiet rhythm of life here. I no longer thought about what time it was or what I should do next. I simply followed the day as it came. On my second to last morning, I went for a walk along the beach. The sky was pale blue, and the water sparkled in the light. I took off my shoes and walked close to the sea. The sand was warm under my feet. I felt peaceful, but also a little sad. I knew I would soon go back to Sweden. I had missed my family and friends, but part of me wanted to stay here longer. As I walked, I saw Peter sitting near his boat. He was cleaning the nets and humming a song. When he saw me, he smiled. "You look different now," he said. I laughed and asked, "How?" He looked at me for a moment. "You smile more," he said simply. I thanked him and sat down beside him. We talked for a while about the island, about life, and about how time passes too fast. He told me that when he first came to Tenerife, he thought he would stay only for one season, but then the place changed him. "I learned how to live slowly," he said. I listened quietly. His words were simple, but they stayed in my heart. That afternoon, I went to my favorite hill above the town. I sat under a tree and looked at the sea. The light was golden, and small boats moved far below. I took a deep breath and thought about my time here. I had not done anything big or special. I had not climbed mountains or seen every part of the island, but somehow this quiet time had changed how I felt about my life. Before this trip, I used to feel like I was waiting for something, some big moment that would make everything clear. But now I understood that peace did not come all at once. It came in small pieces, in morning light, in the sound of water, in friendly faces. I had not found all the answers here, but I had found space inside me to breathe. In the evening, I went to meet Sophie and her friends one last time. We sat by the beach as the sun went down. Someone played guitar, and others talked quietly. The air was warm, and the sky turned orange and pink. Sophie smiled at me and said, "You look happy here." I told her that I was. She said softly, "Then you'll take that with you, even when you leave." Her words felt true. I didn't need to stay on the island forever. What I had learned here could stay with me anywhere. The next day was my last one. I woke early and packed my bag slowly. My clothes smelled of sea salt and warm air. I looked around the small room that had been my home for a month. It was simple but full of quiet memories. Mornings by the window, evenings listening to the sea, nights when I sat in silence feeling calm. I opened the window one more time and watched the light move across the water. I whispered, "Thank you," though I wasn't sure to whom. Maybe to the island itself. On my way to the airport, I looked out the bus window. The town grew smaller, and soon I could only see the sea and hills. I felt both sad and grateful. I didn't cry. I just smiled quietly. For once, I wasn't running from anything. I was simply moving forward. The flight back to Sweden felt long. I watched clouds again, just like I had on my way here. But this time, my thoughts were different. I wasn't thinking about escaping the cold or planning my next step. I was thinking about how I wanted to live. I wanted to keep the calm feeling I found on the island. I wanted to keep noticing small things, the color of the sky, the sound of people laughing, the smell of rain. When I arrived home, the air was cold and the streets were covered in snow. The sky was gray and the city looked quiet. I walked to my apartment and opened the door. It looked just the same as before, but I didn't feel the same. I made a cup of tea and stood by the window, just like I used to. Outside, I could see the white roofs and soft light from street lamps. For a moment, I missed the sound of waves, but then I smiled. The peace I had found there was still with me. It was not only about the sea or the sun, it was about how I saw things. The next day, I went back to my normal life. I took the bus to work, said hello to the same people, sat at my desk, and opened my computer. But I didn't feel the same inside. The noise around me felt softer. I didn't rush. I didn't worry about small things. When my coworker asked how my vacation was, I said, "It was beautiful." She smiled and said, "You look different." I smiled back. I felt different. That evening, I walked home instead of taking the bus. The air was cold and snow fell lightly. I looked up at the sky and watched the white flakes fall. They looked peaceful, like slow rain. I realized that even this cold, gray place had its own kind of beauty. I had just forgotten to see it. Days passed and life continued, but I felt lighter, calmer. I started taking small walks after work, sometimes in silence, sometimes just listening to music. I began to notice how the light changed in the afternoon, how people smiled at each other when they passed on the street. I spoke more with the woman who worked at the small shop near my house. I smiled more, even on quiet days. One Sunday morning, I sat by the window with my tea. The street outside was quiet and snow covered everything. I thought about Tenerife and the friends I met there. I thought about the sea, the light, and how free I had felt. But most of all, I thought about how much I had learned from being away from home. I didn't need to change my whole life. I just needed to live it with more care. The island had taught me something simple but important. Peace is not a place we go to. It is something we can carry inside, wherever we are. I took a deep breath, smiled softly, and watched the snow fall outside my window. I didn't feel lost anymore. I felt ready for whatever came next. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video and subscribe to English Medium Stories. Stay with us for more classic stories in easy English.